You are listening to Peak One Sports.
Welcome to the Sports Biz. I am your host, Tony Nix. If you guys are watching us on YouTube or even listening to us in a podcast format, thank you for joining me. If you are new to the channel or new to our show, or maybe just unfamiliar with our format, just as the title says, we talk sports business. We're going to dive into sports franchises. We will dive into organizations, team relocations, salary caps, you name it, off the field, off the court, we're going to talk about it here. Again, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to subscribe, help us grow. We're still chasing that 100 subscribers. We're creeping up on 90 as we speak. Help us get to 100. We got some great giveaways. If you're listening to us in a podcast format, make sure also to subscribe to our channel and subscribe to Peak One Sports. Follow us on all of our social media outlets at Peak One Sports Network. You can see sports news, announcements, anything from any major organizations. We're going to have it right there. We cover worldwide. Before we jump into it, though, let's thank a couple of our network sponsors for helping us make this all possible. Apogee Grafix, bringing your vision to new heights. Visit apogeegrafix.com. And Betalytics. We can't thank Betalytics enough. These guys have been great to us, great supporters of the channel, great supporters of all of our shows, and really great supporters of the fans, where they're giving us prop bets. You guys check out some of the other shows when we do our live shows on the weekends. Keep an eye out for that, giving you guys some free data from them. But also, from Betalytics, if you sign up today using the code PEAK1, that's Peakone, you will receive 25% discount. Betalytics is a sports betting simplified with AI machine learning algorithms designed to make a powerful and profitable sports better. Accurate game simulations, player prop projections, and betting evaluations delivered on an easy-to-use dashboard. Guys, make sure you download the app. Make sure you sign up using the code PEAK1. Get your discount. Make sure that you're not using your mind or your heart to make these decisions, guys. You let Betalytics help you make your betting smarter. Just quick, before we jump into it today, I want to do a quick follow-up from last week's show, where we discussed the A's and their relocation. We do have some official news that came out. You may have seen it this week, that the Nevada legislator approved a bill that will provide the A's $380 million of taxpayer money to their proposed $1.5 billion ballpark. Just as we talked about it, it was rumored. We thought that this would happen. We thought that Nevada, the state of Nevada and Las Vegas would come through with this, and they are. They're gonna put up some taxpayer money in the amount of $380 million. This should help solidify. Of course, we're still pending the official vote in Major League Baseball, where you have to have 2/3 of the owner votes. I don't see that being a problem here. I think they're going to get this thing voted. I think it's going to happen really quickly this year. I don't believe they're going to drag this out. The next steps in that, obviously, are going to be, where will the A's play next season? If you've been following the A's, they kind of had a hot streak there. The fans of Oakland are, recently purchased a lot of tickets and were passing out shirts said, sell. And they wanted to make sure that everyone nationwide or worldwide knew that the fans weren't the problem with the team, that it was ownership. We'll continue to keep an eye on that. We'll update you as soon as we hear about any the voting through Major League Baseball. But to the very big news and what we're going to talk about and dig into a little bit today, the Washington Commanders tentatively have been sold. The sale of the Washington Commanders is expected to be finalized before the team goes back to Ashburn for training camp, which starts on July 20th. Dan and Tanya Snyder completed and signed an agreement with the Josh Harris Group. The sale is set to be a little over $6 billion. That actually is, I think, $6.05 billion sale of the team, which is what they were looking for. And the Harris Group came up with that. Harris reportedly has 20 limited partners, including billionaire Mitchell Rales, a local businessman to Washington, to D.C., and fellow sports franchise owner and former Los Angeles Laker Magic Johnson is also part of this, has a minority share in this ownership group. And Magic was part of helping push this through, even making some comments publicly saying, that Dan Snyder was a great guy, more or less, is verbatim, but that, really praising Dan Snyder, I think trying to help push this sale through. If that's what it did it, then it did it. It worked. It went through. The Snyders have tentatively agreed to the sale. This will be the highest NFL franchise sale. The last record holder was the Denver Broncos for $4.65 billion, and that was just last year by Rob Walton. As you know, Walton family, the owners of Walmart. There have been some issues, though, with the structuring of this deal that the NFL Finance Committee and Josh Harris Group have been working through. Kind of some of this behind the scenes. This isn't unusual stuff to happen. These types of things happen quite often, actually, when you have sales of teams and big transactions. The NFL has a lot of, and just like all the other sports, the NBA and MLB, they have stipulations to ownerships buying. So the NFL requires that every limited partner be vetted, which I would assume has all been completed by this point, but they're going to have to dig into some stuff. Some of the bigger issues that we've seen involve the NFL's debt limit and their rules against private equity funds owning interest in teams. There's a $1.1 billion limit there, which would be the debt limit that the NFL would allow based on this debt rule. Josh Harris and Mitchell Rales were both in New York recently to meet with the NFL Finance Committee, just to go over some of these things, just to kind of see how they needed to structure who could be involved, who couldn't be involved, where did money need to come. Harris reportedly agreed to replace some of that private equity that the committee felt was skirting the rules. What we do know, though, is the private equity funds would have been directly owned equity or loaned money to the Commanders. This wouldn't be stakes held in. This money would have come in through loan processes. We don't yet know, though, how the Josh Harris Group plans to replace those private equity financing that they're pulling out. But it has been reported that Harris himself has been selling shares of Apollo Global Management, the private equity fund that he founded, on almost a daily basis for the past month. He's been cashing out. So he's becoming more liquid, as the NFL rules would require. They don't want your money tied up in other places, and heaven forbid that you have some deals go bad and you go bankrupt. The NFL is very strict about that, and they're just not going to allow you to have that type of debt out there. Harris's net worth is $6.3 billion alone, but the group he's bidding with is reportedly worth over $100 billion. So it seems like a no-brainer. It seems like this is going to be an easy deal. These guys are going to get this done. No big deal. Harris is expected to own the NFL minimum of 30% of the team for a majority owner. So he will be considered the owner of the team. Everyone else would be minorities in this. Harris. One fun fact though about Harris, he's also, and you may know this, he's also a minority owner in the Pittsburgh Steelers, and with his Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment Group, is the majority owner of the Philadelphia 76ers and the New Jersey Devils. In 2014, shortly after buying the New Jersey Devils, Harris was quoted as saying, "What we've done is buy good companies, good franchises that have a reason to exist, but for whatever reason may have some financial difficulties or need some new leadership." That absolutely is what the Commanders are. I believe the 100% the Washington Commanders, for a fact, fall into a franchise that needs new leadership. They need new guidance. With such a rich history in Washington and a very bright future with the new leadership, it's really all we've seen them lack. They have young good players. They have a great coach, really. Washington was one of the worst 6 teams in the league under Dan Snyder and posted a record of 164, 220, and 2 record in 24 seasons under Dan Snyder. Guys, Dan Snyder completely blew it with this team. There's no doubt about it. You speak with fans. The fans are ecstatic about this sell. The fans, they've been in turmoil. The Washington fan base is such a good fan base. I mean, you really look at it that they've been through so much with name changes from the Redskins to the Washington football team because they had no identity, and then they, finally settle on the Commanders. So this fan base has been through a lot, and they've stuck with this team. They've continued to support this franchise, even as abysmal as the 24 seasons under Snyder were. The team needs more than just wins, though. With multiple reports over the past couple of years about the workplace culture and allegations of financial improprieties, that they need a fresh start. There was no way that the Snyder family could have continued ownership with this. They were under investigation for a lot of allegations. I think there was some sexual harassment stuff within the workplace, some other cultural issues within the workplace, their financial problems. Dan Snyder arguably could be one of the worst business owners and team owners in the history of sports. Made terrible decisions. I mean, it was almost in a position that he's being forced out by the league, that they were pushing for him to sell the team. One of the big jobs that the new ownership group will find is looking for a new site for the team. Currently where they're at FedEx Field is owned by the Commanders, but you're talking about older, dilapidated stadiums. They don't meet the requirements of what you see the NFL stadiums having with the technology and the capacity and just the art and luster of what an NFL stadium is today. So they will be having to look. They will look for a new site. Reports have been made that several politicians in D.C. Want the team back at the RFK site, where the Redskins called home from 1961 to 1996, before moving to FedEx Field in Landover, Maryland. Moving the team back to D.C. is a fan favorite move, as many have said that the team should come back home, and that's quotes we heard from lots of fans that were interviewed saying, we want our team to come back home. They want their team back in DC. One of the big things, if they're going to go back to the RFK site is a wreck. They would need to demolish the stadium, so we could see them playing at FedEx Field for the next couple seasons still. If they can come to an agreement, if they can get some city funding for it, which I would imagine they probably could, they build a nice new state-of-the-art facility there at RFK site. Maybe even rename it RFK. But bring up the technology, bring up the luster and what NFL stadiums have become now. I think that's a big chore for them. Also, what they'll need to do and look into is the current team president, Jason Wright, and general manager, Martin Mayhew. Do they keep their jobs? Do they hang on to them? I think probably when the new ownership group comes in, I don't know how aggressive they will be. I could absolutely see that President Jason Wright being out pretty quick. Maybe they let the general manager hang around, try to prove himself a little bit. They're bringing in talent. They're drafting some talent. They're kind of that. They're still an up and coming team. They're building. They're a young franchise still, or a young team within the franchise that they, may continue to give Martin Mayhew some more time at general manager. And then Coach Ron Rivera, like I mentioned earlier, a great coach, has had health issues in the past, seems to be back and back to good health. I think that Ron Rivera is a good choice here. I think Ron Rivera can stick around. He's playing in one of the toughest divisions in the NFC East that's in the NFL. They're going to have an uphill climb. They have to face the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Giants. All four teams are always very competitive. Even in years that seem down, they still fight. They're not a team that will just roll over and die. But Washington is going to have an uphill climb. But hopefully with the new ownership group and some good moves, they're going to get a new home, maybe some new front office staff. They're going to maybe restructure the team a little bit, continue to grow, continue to draft well, maybe make some moves for some big franchise players. They still a little lackluster at quarterback. So we'll see how these moves start to come up. But again, my guess is that everyone within the current regime would be there at least on a short term. And the new ownership group will just look to improve as needed. Part of the news that came out recently that we heard, the U.S. Patent Office had denied the Washington Commanders' trademark request with the push for the Harris Group to once again, would they once again change the name of the franchise? Will they go through this process again, knowing that they can't, they can't get a trademark on Washington Commanders? A few views of this is man, this is bad, but it could be a good move for them. As far as marketing went, when they went from the Redskins to the Washington football team, they sold tons of jerseys, shirts, all the apparel. They sold tons. Then you play that a few seasons, they rebrand to the Commanders. Again, everyone flocks out to buy the new jerseys and all the things. Luckily they kept the similar colorway styles, so it worked with the franchise. It wasn't a complete blow up of the colors. I think probably for me, a good move is just go back to the Washington football team. Just stick with that. They had done a good job building some rapport with that name, and kind of, it was something that was starting to grow on me as the Washington football team. I still really like the Redskins. I love the logos that they use for the Redskins. I love the name. Obviously, that's not an option anymore. But I really do think that the Washington football team would be. I think that would be a good move to go back to that. I like it much more than I do the Commanders. So, we'll see about that. If that's a move that they want to make. Really, let me know in the comments below. What do you think? I mean, do you think that this sell is good for the NFL and the NFC East? How quick do you think this team makes moves? Do they start to can guys early on? Where do you think that they should build their stadium? Should they stay in Maryland? Should they go to Virginia? Should they come back to DC and establish themselves again in the District of Columbia. And should they change their names back? Let me know in the comments. What do you think? Would you change the name? And if so, what would you change the name to? That's all the time I've got for today, guys. That's all we have. If you want to continue this discussion, as always, leave your comments below. Again, follow us on social media. Check out our YouTube, our podcast pages, anywhere you listen to podcasts, and be sure to subscribe. Until next time, I'm Tony, and this is the Sports Biz.